Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So this is a new section of my channel that I'm going to start called basically professional development. And essentially this isn't like, make yourself better by climbing a mountain or anything that exotic, right? This is just kind of some tips and tools and tricks that I've learned over the last 27 years in corporate America, essentially. And so I thought it might be good to kind of share some of these principles for folks that are at really any stage of their career in post school, right? So you finish school, it's time to go out and get a job and start the daily grind of work. I can pretty much guarantee at times it will be a grind. So I wanted to talk a little bit about interviewing because I think that's kind of that first step in the door, right? We should probably do some other episodes on things like deciding what you want to do and things like that, but I think that's a little deeper. I just wanted to record some quick tips on, really how I think about interviewing. So I'm essentially going to break this into three different parts. I'm going to break it into, how to find a job, two, how to prepare and execute your interview, and then three, really questions to ask and also determining whether this is probably the right job for you and the right company to work for. Because that's, I think, the most important thing. There's nothing worse than to go through an entire interview process and really think, oh, you know what, I can't wait to start this job. And then you get into the job and it's a disaster. And ask me how I know this, because I've been in that situation. Thankfully, less often than more, but it still happens. So let's talk about how to find a job. So you've determined, you've got, some areas that you want to go into. You've got some companies kind of picked out. How do you go out and land that interview? Anybody can fill out a resume, apply for a job, and then do those things. But that's kind of the easy part in my perspective. I think the tough thing is landing the interview, right? If you haven't submitted a lot of job applications or you're fairly new to the workforce or getting into the workforce for the first time, I think that's probably the hardest thing that I kind of see right now. Talking to people and just looking at things is really just getting your foot in the door. That's tough. Getting that first interview, getting past the algorithm selection of resumes and things like that. How do you land that interview, right? How do you get it? So you've put in your resume, you've selected your job, you selected the company, or companies, jobs. You should go for more than one. Now, how do you get that interview? How do you get past that selective algorithm that's filtering out all these resumes? How do you get there? Well, I strongly believe in being resourceful and being hungry. You got to be those two things. You got to be resourceful. In other words, you got to think of ways to get your foot in the door. And usually the best way to get your foot in the door is to find a mutual connection that can go to bat for you inside that company. Because that's the hardest thing, is trying to stand out from all those other applicants, right? So I'm going to share a couple tips there. But two, you have to be hungry. You can't just send in your resume and be like, well, they didn't call. I didn't get my interview. I guess I didn't get it. Like, how bad do you want it, right? Like, you have to be hungry to actually go after it. So you have to follow up. You have to be persistent. You have to sometimes be a little annoying, right? I don't mean that in a negative way, but you have to be persistent. I'll use the word persistent. So first, you have to be resourceful. So you have the best tool out there that's ever been available, and that's LinkedIn. Go out on LinkedIn, search for that company, and then search for people that work in that company. And if you're lucky, you're going to have somebody maybe that's one connection to somebody that works in that company, and you can, hook up with them and try to get, some kind of verbal, hey, will you talk to the hiring manager, or who's the hiring manager, or can you provide me their contact information? Always ask that question, because they can always just say no. Some people won't share that information with you, and that's perfectly fine, but you should ask, right? Because if you can get in contact with the hiring manager and say, hey, I'm Jake, I sent my resume through the algorithm, but here it is, I uploaded my resume to the site, but I haven't really heard anything, so I just wanted to, just introduce myself, send my resume, here's a quick couple things in the resume that you might find interesting. Keep it short, keep it polite, and always, say, look forward to talking to you, or something like that. And maybe as we develop this series, I'll show some real-time examples, or maybe I'll walk you through how to use LinkedIn to do that. So finding that one-person connection to that company that can either get you in touch with a hiring manager, or Just give them your email. Give you their email would even be pretty important there, or very, very helpful. That's if you're lucky. Most of the time, you won't be lucky. Most of the time, you're not going to be able to have that one connection into the company. So you're going to have to get a little creative. How to be resourceful? What you need to do is look at the people that work for that company, okay, and see if they're doing a talk, see if they're doing an event. Kind of cyber stalk them a little bit. I don't mean that in a negative way, but do some research on those people. Are there committees they're a member of? Are they a part of a charity? Are they part of a Tuesday night bingo crew? Something to where you could go and set yourself up and put yourself in the middle of some activity that person is doing, whether that's going to listen to a talk and then going up to them afterwards and ask an intelligent question and be, oh, by the way, I'd love to have the opportunity to work with you and your company. I put in my resume, didn't really hear anything, but here's my card. Okay, always have cards on you. That's very important. Or have your LinkedIn QR code if you'd rather do the non-paper way, which I fully understand. I never have cards on me. I'm giving the advice and I don't really follow it. I do have cards on me now. Anyway, tangent. You know how I get. But just put yourself in the middle of that person's trajectory, right, to where you can have an accidental but yet calculated way to get in the middle of that. And this cross threads into being hungry. I mean, again, it's easy to submit your resume to a bunch of different places and be like, yeah, still looking. I mean, like, how bad do you want it? So think of resourceful ways to put yourself in touch with people inside that company, because otherwise it's going to be really tough to get that interview. It's probably you and 1,000 people, and you got to find some kind of way to put yourself above and beyond those people. So just something to think about there. Okay, now you've landed the interview, right? You did your homework, you were hungry, you were persistent, you put yourself in the middle of that person's, activities, and you got that intro, and they put in the recommendation for you or tipped off the hiring manager to you, something. You got in the door. So congratulations. Like, in my opinion, the hard part's over. You got in the door. So now you have to impress, right? So how do I prepare for an interview? So a lot of people will just be like, nah, I'll wear a nice tie and suit, and I'll just get on the call or go in and, I'll just stay calm, won't have a lot of caffeine, I'll just answer some questions. In my opinion, that is a way to not get a job. Okay? You're preparing yourself for the absolute bare minimum. And people don't want to hire people that do bare minimum. They want to hire people that will murder themselves and kill themselves and get unhealthy for the success of the company. Now, your job is to not do that, right? And figure out what your balance is, because again, at the end of the day, it's a job, it's money, and you have a life, and that life is a fixed amount. Okay, so how do you really prepare? How do you take it to the next level to where they were like, this dude prepared big time for this interview? Or they may not even think that. They may just be like, I like this person. They don't know why. It's because you prepared and you dug your heels in and you did your homework. So how do you do that? Well, first, typically you're going to get the hiring manager screening call, right? And so there's not much you can do to kind of prepare for this because it's probably outsourced. If it is insourced, you're probably not going to know who it is. But the minute you do know who it is, and you're going to do this for everybody you interview with, do some homework on them. Go out to LinkedIn, go out to YouTube, go out to Facebook, go out all these places and research who you're talking to. Because what you want to do is you want to find middle ground with that person, okay? For example, I recently just did a demo for a person on a product. And before the demo, like, I could just show up and do the demo. I do it hundreds of times a month. But instead what I did was I cued in on a couple things. So I went out and researched them a little bit. Their hobby was building pinball machines from scratch. Well, it just so happens that I had built a retro arcade machine for my kids. And so I knew during my demo what I wanted to do was insert that somewhere in my demo. I would talk about that because that would immediately, and I want to do that early on, because that would immediately like fuse us together from a common connection, common ground. And they would be like, I like this dude. He has the same interests as me. We like people that are like us. At the end of the day, our subconscious likes people who are like us. But you want to find that common ground with somebody. And so immediately I made that comment and they were like, okay. And I could see him perk up because now we have a common interest together and he's interested in me as a person, Okay, so these are just little psychological tricks, not psychological tricks, but these are just little tricks to help just give you that little advantage, because that's really all you need, right? To get that next step in the interview. During the screening interview, they call it usually the screening interview. It's a rude term, but essentially they're trying to filter out people that they don't want to talk to, and they want to save the time of the people in the company to interview only the most serious candidates. So this is a screening interview. Just accept it, and it's not personal. So when you're answering questions in the screening interview, be confident, be short in your answers, but answer the questions. Don't be too short. Don't ramble on. I tend to ramble on. That's something that I've had to work on my whole life. In fact, in these videos, it's very apparent that I do ramble on quite a bit. But when I'm interviewing, I'm very focused and I answer the questions. So just answer concisely, answer confidently, and do your best there. So let's just assume you got through that. If you didn't, it wasn't meant to be. Move on. Okay, find something else. If it's a company that you really want to get into, keep trying. Like I'll tell you, the company I spent the most of my adult life in, it took me 4 times to get in. I got rejected 3 times. Okay, and these weren't nice rejections. These were like, dude wasn't technical enough. Dude didn't know what the heck he was talking about. I mean, very pointed feedback, right? And the interviews were brutal. I'm talking 8 hours, like 4 sets of 2 people rotating in and out that essentially just hammered me with technical questions the entire time, gave me impossible scenarios, tried to see if I would go back on answers. This was not a fun time to interview. These were in what I would call the darker days of corporate America, where interviews were meant to destroy you. Now you got through the screening interview. Now they're saying, hey, you're going to meet with so-and-so here. You're going to meet with so-and-so here, and you're going to meet with so-and-so here. Awesome. Now you have the 3 names of the people who you need to go do your research on before the interview. So same thing, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, all these different social areas. Look for stuff they're into, right? Maybe they're into rowing or something. It's like, well, I don't know jack about rowing. Go learn about rowing. Okay. So, and the reason why is because when they say, hey, do you have any questions for me? Which they should if they're a good interviewer. They'll ask you if you have questions. Yeah, this is kind of off topic, but I noticed you used to row in college. Like, what got you into rowing? Like, it has nothing to do with the job, but again, you're creating this common ground between you two as individuals and as human beings, right? We need to make those personal connections so that we are remembered throughout a sea of other people trying to interview. Research the people you're interviewing. Research the company, okay? I've interviewed people where they had no idea what the company I worked at even did. So they're applying for a job at a company that they don't know anything about. Okay, they may know a little bit about it, but they didn't know enough. Okay, that tells me they're not interested in working for the company I'm at or they're applying to. They're interested in working at any company. And that tells me they're desperate. That also tells me that they don't have a good thought process behind where they interview and why. Therefore, to me, that's higher turnover. So I'm going to spend time training somebody and putting them under their wing only to find out this wasn't the right job for them. They're going to quit. Okay. So not interested in that kind of person. Now, they don't have to know everything, right? But just show that I'm impressed when people show that they did a little bit of homework on the company that they're interviewing at, right? So think about that. Look at the financial history. How did they do in the last couple quarters? Good or bad? If they did bad, why? If they did good, why? Understanding all these things, because all this is you're compiling a list of things that you can talk about in the interview if you need it. Okay. For example, like, hey, why do you want to work at Acme Corporation? Right. Well, I've been following Acme Corporation for a little while now, and I noticed that this product right here was really something I could believe in because it did this, 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 and I think that's fantastic. That shows that right there that you are very prepared for that interview. The next thing you need to prepare is good questions to ask. And I'm talking about questions, be creative with these questions. So when they end the interview and they say, do you have any questions for me about the job? Ask them open-ended questions. It's important to ask them open-ended questions. So for example, why do you like working for this company? What's the thing you don't like working for this company? What about the hiring manager? How do you feel about them? Have you worked with other managers that you liked better than this hiring manager? Why? Those are all very good questions. And you're not just asking for the sake of impressing that person, you're also digging for information to understand whether you're going to like this job or not. And so that gets me into the next part. So now, you've got the interview, you're asking the right questions, things like that. How do you determine that this place is a place that you want to work at? One, and two, how do you make sure that the team you're going to work in and the manager managing that team are going to be right for you? Because those two things are critically important, right? I would say the second one, for the manager and the team, is even more important, because if it's a good fit at the company and you get onto a team, yeah, there's a chance you could move laterally or move up and try to find somewhere else if you're not happy. But if you're not happy, you tend not to impress people. When you don't impress people, you don't move in the company, right? So not in all cases, but those are tendencies of things that I've just seen play out over and over and over again. So asking those questions during the interview is really important, okay? Things to watch for, right? That are flags on maybe why you don't want to work for that company or don't want to work for that person. One, if the person that you're interviewing with has only been there a year, and everybody that you looked at in LinkedIn only worked there 6 months or so. Now, for startups, this can be a little different, but for established companies, that's a signal, especially people who have worked together and didn't work together very long, or left the company after they joined that job because they were there for 10 years and then they left after they joined that job. These are trends that you want to look for, and these are all things that you can pull out of LinkedIn that you want to be careful of, because that's an indicator that this team maybe has high turnover. Okay, why does it have high turnover? Could be a myriad of things: overworking people, jerk manager, incompetent manager. The people working there just suck, and the manager's awesome, but everybody else sucks. Like, it could be any of those things, but these are signals that you want to watch for. If the person interviewing you doesn't give you time to ask questions, that's interesting to me, because that may indicate A, they're not interested in you at all, or B, they're a terrible interviewer, or C, they are maybe checked out, maybe, and they were told to interview you and they really have no interest in interviewing you, and they don't really even know why they're working for that company anymore. But if they don't let you ask questions, that's an indicator to me. It's not a red flag, I would say, but it's an indicator. If you have two other interviews and they don't let you ask questions, maybe there's some kind of authoritarian rule that's going on in that group or that manager to where you don't get to ask questions. You just do what you're told. So be careful of that. Now, there are people that are just terrible interviewers. Like, they interview people and they were asked to do it, and they have no business interviewing people, because either they haven't interviewed a lot of people, or they don't like to interview people, or they're just terrible at it. So don't set the sail on just, they didn't let me ask any questions, this must be a terrible company. But if you get all the way up to the hiring manager and they don't let you ask questions, and they're kind of like rude and stuff, that's probably an indicator that you don't want to work there, okay? Or at least for that group inside that company. So look for those little indicators like that, because go out to like Glassdoor, read the reviews, but just know right there, a lot of times people don't post about how much they love a job. They usually post how much it sucked, okay? People are twice as likely to post what sucks about something rather than what's good about something. So you've asked your questions. I've talked a little bit about what questions to ask, things to kind of look for, in terms of high turnover, things like that. If a company had a bad quarter and they've had like 3 good quarters before that, I wouldn't call that like a no-go on that. Companies have bad quarters. I mean, the current company that I work for, the first quarter that I joined, a week after I joined, was terrible, and they had great quarters all before that. I mean, my human nature was like, oh my God, what did I do? Because I left a job of 17 years in a company to a company that's been around for 10 years, and they had a bad quarter, and I'm like, oh, I'm not used to this. So things are going to happen like that. Don't discount companies for that. Now comes the offer part. So do your follow-ups, week out, things like that. If you do follow-ups and you're not getting any return, I would do like at least 3 follow-ups. And if they don't answer you after 3, you need to move on. The second thing is, don't hinge your entire life on one job opportunity. Be interviewing for 2 or 3 at a time. what I see countless times, especially in young people, is they'll apply for, and this is true, I don't mean to say it that way. I see this a lot in young folks. I also see this a lot in seasoned folks. Well, they'll apply for one job and wait. "Oh, I didn't get it. Apply for the next job. Wait. No. Apply for 3 or 4 at the same time and have them all juggling. Because worst case scenario, you get 2 offers or 3 offers, and then you take the one that, and then you build your little matrix. Like, what do I like about this? What do I like about this? What I didn't like about this? Where's my career probably better? Where can I move? Am I going to stay there a while? If not, why? You can start building out your matrix of things to think about when it comes to choosing an offer. So let's talk about the offer. So when the offer comes, remember, it's not personal. It's a company. So if you're just starting out, they're going to lowball you because you don't have any experience, at least in as much as you may think you have a lot of experience, but they don't think you have a lot of experience. Therefore, they're going to give you a low offer. And that's okay. Don't take it personally, but don't be afraid to counter, especially, your situation is what it is, right? You may need a job and you absolutely have to take it, and that's okay because you got to feed your family, you got to feed yourself, your rent's coming up. Totally get that. Do what you got to do, okay? But don't be afraid to ask for more money. Worst case, I've never heard of somebody say, well, I did a counter offer and then they just never called me again. I've never run into that before. Usually, unless you're just insulting them. For example, if they offer you $100,000 a year and you come back and say, I can't do it for less than 200,000. Like, I would not do that. Okay, that's unless you are a god or so sought after that you have people pounding your door down and you can get the highest dollar, which if that's you, awesome, man. Like, that's, I don't know how you did that, but rock on. But within reason, okay, you probably have figured out what you need from a compensation perspective. So if they offer you $100,000 and you wanted 105, ask for 105. Be like, I was really hoping for 105, and here's why. Blah 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 blah. I think I bring this and this. The other thing I would say too is when you're negotiating for a higher salary, the other thing to talk about is I'm flexible. For example, I'm somebody that can do a lot of different things. So while I might just get this position, I could be grooming for lots of other positions, or I can even be doing work for other things too. Now, don't overcommit yourself and say, I'm going to murder myself in order to succeed in this company, but show that you're flexible and versatile, because that's where the money comes from, right? Is when you can hire somebody that can do not just one thing really well, but they do one thing really well and a lot of other things pretty good too, and they're open-minded and open to doing other things. I'm not saying you need to be a yes person, or where you never say no and they like murder you in the amount of work, right? But what I'm saying is somebody that's open-minded, flexible, that is the perfect employee. Like, that is an employee that's really, really awesome. Now, I'm talking in careers where these are more thought jobs, I'm not, if this is a construction job or something like that, where they're like, no, all we want you to do is dig that ditch. Okay. Even in stuff like that, you could be flexible. Be like, hey, I'm happy to dig that ditch. And then, if you need me to haul that rebar over there too, that's cool. Like, just be open to it, because people, I think, are drawn more to people that are flexible rather than like, well, you told me all I was going to have to do is this ditch. I'm just going to dig this ditch. And then, you didn't say nothing about no rebar, dude. It all comes back to the fact that nobody likes somebody that just wants to be in a lane, right? And they're not interested, and it's got to be perfect. Like, you got to tell me exactly what I got to do, or else I'm not going to do. Those are typically people that don't get employed very much, okay? Or if they are employed, that's the person everybody wants to get rid of. Sorry, it's the way it is. Okay, so don't be afraid to respond with a counteroffer, as long as it's reasonable. Don't insult people, okay? And be honest with your value too. Like, if you're just out of college, you may have to take a lower salary just to get in the game. And that's the other thing I would say too is, if they say, well, hundreds as high as we go, but you really want to work for that company and it's going to look awesome on your resume and everything else, money's not everything. Having something on your resume that from somewhere awesome, or that you did something awesome, like, that will pay you in the long game. So don't just play for the short game. That's the other thing I would say too is, well, maybe that should be a totally separate area, but anyway, so, these are the things that, this is going to be really long, but these are just some of the things that I think about when I'm interviewing. And I've interviewed for a lot of jobs, and I've gotten a lot of jobs, and I've not gotten a lot of jobs. I've actually not gotten more jobs than I've actually gotten. And most of the time it turned out to be a blessing. honestly. So yeah, that's probably something to talk about too. What happens when you don't get it? They're like, sorry to inform you, we went with a different candidate. Do not fire a rocket propelled grenade, RPG, into that bridge. Don't set it on fire. It's very easy to get into a trap to where you burst out of emotion, right? And you reply back, well, why not? I mean, or I can't believe you didn't go with me because I'm the ultimate candidate. Please, God, do not do that, right? You need to be professional. This stuff sticks around, and these emails stick around. Hiring managers, sometimes it's a close knit group. Like, do not burn bridges. Okay, that's something my old man told me quite a bit, and I take it to heart in everything I do. If somebody pisses me off, I don't automatically fire an RPG at them. Okay, like that's just not conducive to a good time. Usually in corporate America, at least, these knits are close. Like, unless you're relocating all over the world and stuff like that, I've had people that piss me off really bad come back and be my manager a year later. Like, and because I handled it with tact, I was still employed a year later. Okay. So just make sure that you don't burn the bridge. Oh, thank you very much for letting me know. I really appreciate that. If there's any feedback that you can share with me to make me better, from the interview process, etc., I would greatly appreciate that. I'm always working to improve myself, and I hope that you would consider me for future positions. That is a perfect way to just seal that bow, okay? And then also, don't let that be, like I mentioned, don't let that be the deterrent, right? If you want to work for a company, keep trying, man. And if you impressed in that interview, guess what? Yeah. Oh, so now you may be thinking, let me talk about this for a minute. Now you may be thinking, Jesus, I just wasted all that time on all those interviews. This was a complete waste of my time. No. Okay. If you implemented the practices that I talked about before in getting that job and preparing and things like that, chances are you've impressed at least one person in that panel. So guess what? Now they're thinking about you. They move to a new job, and a year later, 6 months later, whatever, maybe a week later, they move to a new job. They're like, we're hiring. I interviewed this dude that really kicked butt in that interview I just had with them. Maybe we ought to interview him or her. Boom. Now you got your next interview. You didn't even have to try for that one, because the work you put into preparing for that interview you wanted will continue to pay off. Not everything is a short game. Some things are a long game. Okay. So these are just some tips and tricks from an old man, that who's interviewed for some jobs in corporate America and things like that. But even if it's a job at a grocery store, like you're getting your first job as a kid or something, these things still apply. Like, hey, I'd like to let's just run through the simulation. Okay. You're going to a supermarket. This is your first job. You're 16 years old. You just want to go get carts and bag groceries. Hey, can I have an application to fill out? Yeah, it's at that computer over there. Okay, cool. Hey, just FYI, like, what's the manager's name here? It's Sally. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks, man. What's your name? Jake. Cool. Hey, nice to meet you, Jake. I'm Steve. Okay. Go fill out the little thing on the little computer thing. Send it in. Go back to Steve. Okay. Jake or Steve, whoever that was, go back to that other person. Hey, I just filled out the computer thing. So what happens next? Well, yeah, they'll just call you. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's cool, man. Do you like working here? You do? Okay, cool. How's it working for Sally? Is it pretty cool? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you get back to work, man. I don't want to hold you up, but I really hope I get to work with you. Boom! You just left a positive impression on Jake or Steve. I don't remember their name now. And guess what? Now you also know the manager's name, Sally. So what are you going to do when you get home? You go out and do some research. Who is Sally? What does she like? What is she into? Those types of things. I don't mean this in a creepy way. Don't be sliding into DMs and being like, "Hey, Sally, what's going on?" No, nothing like that. This is all in good fun. Okay, it's all preparing for that interview. So you don't hear anything. It's been a couple days. Go up there. Hey, is Sally in today? Yeah, cool. Is it cool if I have a word with her real quick? No, she's really busy. Okay, no problem. Here's my card, or here's my contact information, or here's my, something, leave something behind. Will you just give this to Sally and just let her know I applied a couple days ago and I really want to work here? Dude, like, you're planting seeds, man. Like, pretty soon everybody knows who you are, right? And now it could be a negative thing if you're in there, you're like, I don't understand why Sally won't call me. Dude, Sally's running a store. Sally can't be calling everybody, right? Okay, just be patient. But next thing you know, boom, Sally calls me. Hey, I got your information from Steve and somebody else. They said that you were interested in working here. Yeah, when can you come in for an interview? Boom, work paid off. So it doesn't matter if this is like a grocery store thing, of your first job all the way to corporate America, these same principles apply, right? So my advice to you, be hungry, be respectful, prepare well, and you will get that job. Cool. So I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully you enjoy this. If you have any comments, leave them in the comment section. If you like this video, like and subscribe. If you want to subscribe, that's cool. If you don't, if you have questions or want to see future episodes or anything like that, put it in the comments. Let's have a dialogue about it. I'm happy to answer anything. Look at my other videos. I answer people all the time. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.